The prison yard was still quiet when James was led back outside the following morning for his second visit with Buddy. Word had spread among the guards and inmates alike about the extraordinary reunion the day before. Many hoped to witness the miracle again, a glimpse of something pure in a place defined by its harshness. When Buddy arrived, his golden coat gleamed in the soft morning light. His eyes searched the perimeter, and as soon as he saw James, a spark of recognition lit up his face. James's heart raced. The gate opened, and Buddy bounded forward, his paws barely touching the ground. The dog leaped into James's arms, his body trembling with excitement. James knelt down, wrapping his arms around his loyal friend, holding him as if he could never let go. Tears streamed down James's cheeks, mixing with the dirt and sweat of years spent behind bars. Buddy licked his face gently, a silent comfort that spoke louder than any words. For a moment, the two were lost in their reunion, man and dog, connected beyond time, distance, and the walls that separated them. But as the minutes passed, something unexpected began to happen. Buddy's excitement shifted. He stopped wagging his tail and pulled away slightly, his ears flattening against his head. Instead of the joyful barks from the day before, Buddy began to bark sharply, almost urgently, circling around James and pawing at his chest. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. They weren't sure what to make of Buddy's behavior. Was the dog anxious, sensing the heavy atmosphere? Or was there something more? James winced, his face tightening with sudden pain. He pressed a hand to his chest, struggling to breathe. The warmth of Buddy's fur didn't ease the sharp ache that radiated through his body. Medic! One of? The guards called out immediately. James collapsed slowly to the ground, clutching his chest. Buddy stayed right beside him, whining softly but refusing to leave his side. The dog's eyes were wide and alert, locked on James as if urging the guards to act quickly. Within moments, medical staff arrived, rushing to James's aid. As they examined him, the initial concern turned into alarm. James was suffering from a severe cardiac episode, something that had gone unnoticed despite regular health checks. His heart was struggling to function properly, and without immediate treatment, it could have been fatal. The prison warden was informed, and the execution scheduled for later that day was suddenly put on hold. The news rippled through the facility. No one had expected this dramatic turn. Buddy's behavior had saved James's life. The dog's sharp instincts and refusal to leave his side had alerted everyone to a danger that might have gone unnoticed until it was too late. In the hospital wing, James was stabilized and monitored closely. Doctors explained the seriousness of his condition to prison officials. It was clear that without treatment, James's health would deteriorate rapidly. Meanwhile, Buddy waited patiently outside, his presence a constant comfort to James even through the glass of the hospital window. This unexpected medical emergency sparked new questions. If James was not physically fit to face execution, what did the law say about his case? The legal team jumped into action, preparing appeals and motions that could delay or even stop the execution altogether. Outside the prison, the story of James and Buddy began to capture the attention of local media. Headlines described the loyal dog who had saved his owner's life just hours before death was supposed to come. The public reaction was swift and emotional. People were moved by the idea that a dog's loyalty and love could influence such a grave moment. Many began to question the fairness of the punishment, while others simply hoped James would get the chance to live. Inside the prison, the atmosphere shifted. The guards who had once viewed James as just another inmate now saw him as a man given a second chance, one that had been delivered by the unexpected heroism of a dog. James lay in the hospital bed, still weak but grateful. Buddy sat beside him, head resting on his arm, eyes full of quiet assurance. For the first time in years, James felt a flicker of hope. The story wasn't over, and maybe, just maybe, life had one last chapter left for him to write. The hospital room was dimly lit, the soft hum of medical equipment filling the silence. James Whitlow lay on the narrow bed, his breathing slow but steady. The ordeal he had just gone through felt surreal, from the cold, hard walls of the prison to the sterile, unfamiliar world of the infirmary. But through it all, one presence remained constant. Buddy, curled up faithfully at his feet. For years, James had lived in a world ruled by rules and routine, where every moment was measured and controlled. Now, in this quiet room, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Uncertainty. The doctors were clear. James's heart condition was serious. Without treatment, he could face life-threatening complications. But with proper care, his life could be prolonged. This new reality changed everything, not just for James, but for the prison system and the legal team watching closely. As James rested, the guards and officials debated what this meant for his execution. The law required that inmates be physically and mentally competent before any sentence could be carried out. If James wasn't fit, then the execution would have to be postponed, or possibly stopped altogether. Outside the hospital room, Buddy's behavior began to shift in a way that no one could ignore. Typically calm and obedient, Buddy grew restless. He paced back and forth, his ears twitching at every sound. Occasionally, he barked softly, looking toward James's bed as if trying to communicate something urgent. The medical staff, familiar with animals but unused to this kind of interaction in a prison hospital, watched with a mixture of curiosity and concern. One nurse, intrigued by Buddy's unusual behavior, bent down to observe the dog more closely. Is he trying to tell us something? She wondered aloud. As the hours passed, Buddy's agitation grew. He pawed at James's chest and nudged the foreline attached to his arm. Then suddenly, Buddy started barking sharply again, circling James as he had done during their visit in the yard. James looked down, confusion and pain flickering across his face. "Buddy, what is it?" he whispered, reaching to stroke the dog's head. The medical team responded quickly, checking James's vital signs. The monitors beeped erratically. His heart rate was unstable. The dog's instincts were once again proving accurate. Doctors ordered immediate tests. The results confirmed a dangerous irregularity in James's heartbeat, an arrhythmia that required urgent treatment. Buddy's actions had not just saved James once, but twice. His sharp instincts, a mix of loyalty and an almost human understanding of danger, had alerted everyone to a crisis before it became catastrophic. News of Buddy's second intervention spread through the prison and beyond. Staff members were amazed by the dog's behavior, calling him the guardian of James. The story took on a life of its own. Reporters arrived, eager to cover the extraordinary bond between a man and his dog, a bond that had altered the course of a death sentence. Legal teams worked feverishly. James's medical condition meant the execution could not proceed, at least for now. The courts had to determine if James was competent to face his punishment. Experts argued over medical reports, ethical considerations, and legal precedents. Meanwhile, James, weak but determined, reflected on everything he had lost and gained. He thought about his family, his past mistakes, and the strange twist of fate that had brought Buddy back into his life at the most critical moment. He realized that this visit with his dog wasn't just a final request. It was a turning point. Outside the sterile walls of the hospital room, Buddy sat quietly. His eyes watched over James, filled with quiet determination and unwavering loyalty. This was more than the story of a prisoner and his dog. It was a story about hope, survival, and the unexpected ways love can change everything. The days following James Whitlow's sudden medical emergency were a whirlwind of activity. Hospital staff monitored him closely, running tests and adjusting treatments to stabilize his fragile heart. The prison's legal team sprang into action, preparing appeals and presenting medical evidence to halt the execution. But beneath the surface of all the chaos was something remarkable. Buddy's role had become more than just a companion. He was now an unexpected guardian, the spark that ignited a race against time. It was during one of the routine medical checkups that the doctors made a discovery that shocked everyone. James's heart condition was far worse than initially believed. Hidden deep within his cardiac system was a rare and serious defect, one that, if left untreated, could cause sudden death at any moment. The diagnosis stunned both medical professionals and prison officials. How had this been missed for so long? James had been in custody for over a decade, yet no one had caught this life-threatening condition until Buddy's urgent behavior brought it to light. Dr. Morales, the cardiologist assigned to James's case, sat with him one afternoon, explaining the severity of the situation in simple terms. "James, your heart's electrical system is compromised. It's why you had the episode before. If not treated properly, it could lead to fatal arrhythmias," she said gently. James nodded, absorbing the gravity of the news. The weight of his past mistakes was heavy enough, but now his future, his very life, hung in the balance. Prison warden called an emergency meeting with legal advisors and medical staff. The execution was officially suspended indefinitely, while James's condition was evaluated. Meanwhile, Buddy remained by James's side at all times. The dog's calming presence seemed to ease James's anxiety. Staff often found James talking quietly to Buddy, telling him stories from before prison, promising him a better future if he could just hold on. Outside the prison walls, the news of the dog who saved a man's life twice became a sensation. Social media exploded with messages of support for James and Buddy. People from all walks of life sent letters, gifts, and prayers. Some even organized campaigns calling for clemency, moved by the bond that had saved a life. For James, the days blurred together. He underwent a series of treatments designed to strengthen his heart and reduce the risk of further episodes. Each day was a battle, physically, mentally, and emotionally. But amidst the struggle, hope grew. The medical team believed that with the right care, James could live a long, healthy life. The legal implications were just as complex. Lawyers debated whether James was still fit to stand trial or face execution. A discovery of his heart condition opened new avenues for appeals and reconsideration of his sentence. One afternoon, as James rested in his hospital bed, a prison guard approached quietly. "James," he said, "there's been some movement with the courts. They're seriously considering delaying your sentence." James looked up, eyes tired but bright. "I want to believe it," he said softly. Buddy nudged his hand, reminding him to keep faith. The next few weeks brought more medical appointments and legal hearings. Each moment was filled with tension and uncertainty. But through it all, the connection between James and Buddy never wavered. They were no longer just a man and his dog. They had become symbols of resilience and hope. And as the court deliberated, James prepared himself for whatever the future might hold, knowing that no matter what happened, Buddy would be there, waiting. The courtroom was filled with a tense silence as James Whitlow's fate hung in the balance. Weeks had passed since his heart condition had been discovered, and now lawyers and judges gathered to weigh the new evidence. The story of James and Buddy, the dog who had saved him not once but twice, had captured public attention and stirred emotions far beyond the prison walls. James sat quietly in the courtroom, his hands resting on his lap. Though his body was still weak from the hospital stay, his spirit had grown stronger. He glanced at Buddy, who sat calmly beside him, a steady presence amid the chaos. the defense attorney stood, addressing the court with a steady voice. Honor, we are here today not only to request a stay of execution, but to ask for mercy. James Whitlow's health is fragile, and his condition presents a serious risk. Beyond that, his story is one of redemption, loyalty, and hope. She paused, glancing down at her notes. The bond between James and Buddy illustrates something profound about the power of connection, even in the darkest circumstances. This dog's actions have saved James's life and shown a capacity for compassion that we believe should influence this court's decision. The prosecutor rose, his expression stern but tempered. We recognize the extraordinary circumstances. However, we must also consider justice for the victims and the law's demands. Mr. Whitlow's crimes were severe, but the new medical evidence does require consideration. The judge leaned forward, steepling his fingers. This case is unprecedented in many ways. I will review all medical reports and legal arguments thoroughly before making a ruling. In the meantime, the execution is suspended. As the judge spoke, murmurs filled the courtroom. For the first time in years, James felt a cautious optimism. There was still hope, a chance that his story might end differently than expected. Outside the courthouse, supporters gathered, holding signs and chanting words of encouragement. News cameras captured the scene, broadcasting the incredible story of a man and his dog who had touched hearts nationwide. Back in the prison hospital, James continued his treatments. The doctors worked diligently, aiming to stabilize his condition, so that he might one day live a life beyond these walls. James often spoke to Buddy in quiet moments, sharing his hopes and fears. Buddy, if I get out of here, we'll find a place where you can run free. No more cages, no more waiting, James promised. The dog responded with a soft bark, pressing his head against James's hand. Meanwhile, prison officials adjusted to the new reality. The man they once saw as a death row inmate was now a patient, and symbol of hope. Some guards confided that Buddy's visits had changed the atmosphere in the facility. Softer, more humane. Then came a surprising development. The warden approached James one afternoon, his expression unreadable. I want you to know, James, that your case is being reviewed at the highest levels. This story, you and Buddy, it's brought attention to the need for reform. James looked up, a flicker of disbelief in his eyes. Do you think they'll give me a chance? The warden nodded slowly. It's too soon to say for sure. But right now, you're alive because of that dog, and that's something no one can ignore. The weight of those words settled over James like a blanket. For years, he had felt invisible, forgotten by the world. Now, he was at the center of something bigger than himself. Buddy lay beside him, eyes bright and alert. Together, they had weathered storms, both literal and figurative. And though the path ahead was uncertain, James felt ready to face it. With his loyal friend by his side, this battle for mercy was far from over, but hope had entered the room. And sometimes, that was enough to keep fighting. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, family members, advocates, and curious onlookers filled every seat, all eager to hear the judge's decision. After weeks of intense legal debate and heart-wrenching testimony, a moment that could change. James Whitlow's life forever had finally arrived. James sat quietly, his hands folded in his lap, Buddy by his side. The dog's calm presence was a comfort in the midst of uncertainty. The bond between them had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and some believed, redemption. The judge entered, his expression serious, yet thoughtful. He took his seat and looked down at the papers before him, then slowly began to speak. After careful consideration of the new medical evidence and the circumstances surrounding this case, this court finds that Mr. James Whitlow is not currently fit to be executed. His fragile health and ongoing treatment present a risk that execution at this time would be inhumane and unjust. A wave of murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Some people sighed in relief. Others wiped tears from their eyes. James felt his heart skip a beat. The judge continued. Furthermore, this court acknowledges the extraordinary actions of Buddy, Mr. Whitlow's dog, whose intervention led to the discovery of Mr. Whitlow's life-threatening condition. While not a legal factor, it is a reminder of the compassion and loyalty that exist even in the darkest of places. James looked down at Buddy, who wagged his tail softly. The dog had been more than a friend. He had been a guardian and a lifeline. The judge's verdict didn't end the legal battle, but it did grant a reprieve, a stay of execution, and a mandate for continued medical care. Outside the courthouse, supporters erupted in cheers. Cameras flashed as reporters captured the emotional moment. For many, this wasn't just about James Whitlow. It was about justice, mercy, and the power of unexpected hope. James and Buddy returned to the prison hospital, where doctors continued their careful care. James's health slowly improved, though the road ahead remained uncertain. During this time, James began writing letters to his family, to the victims' families, and to people who had reached out with support. He wanted to express his remorse, his gratitude, and his determination to make amends in whatever way he could. Buddy stayed by his side through it all. The dog's loyalty never wavered, offering comfort during moments of pain and fear. In the O.C. prison yard, James found himself opening up to other inmates, sharing his story and the lessons he'd learned. His transformation was real and visible. Some guards even noted that the atmosphere around James had softened, influenced by the presence of Buddy and the changes in James himself. As weeks turned into months, discussions of clemency and parole gained momentum. Lawyers, activists, and community members rallied for a chance to see James rebuild his life outside prison walls. One afternoon, James received a letter that brought both hope and hesitation. It was from the parole board, inviting him to a hearing to discuss his case. He sat quietly with Buddy at his feet, reading the letter again and again. This could be the beginning of a new chapter, James whispered. Buddy looked up, as if understanding the weight of the moment. The hearing was intense. James spoke with honesty and humility about his past mistakes and his hopes for the future. He shared how Buddy had changed his life, giving him a reason to fight and to believe in the possibility of redemption. The board listened intently, impressed by his transformation and the support he had received from the community. Days later, the decision arrived. James Whitlow was granted parole, a chance to rebuild, to live freely, and to honor the bond that had saved him. Tears filled James's eyes as he prepared for the day he would leave the prison behind. Buddy wagged his tail, sensing the significance of the moment. For the first time in years, James felt the promise of freedom, not just from the walls, but from the past that had weighed him down. And as he stepped out into the sunlight, Buddy by his side, James knew this was only the beginning. The day James Whitlow stepped out of the prison gates, the world seemed to hold its breath. After years behind cold walls, after the shadow of an execution hanging over him, he was finally free. But more than freedom, James carried with him a quiet resolve, a promise to himself and to Buddy, the dog who had saved his life twice, that this would be his new beginning. Outside, the sun was warm, the sky a clear blue. Buddy's tail wagged eagerly, and James smiled as he felt the grass beneath his feet for the first time in years. It was a simple joy, but it felt like everything. The small crowd gathered to watch James walk away from the prison. Some supporters, some reporters, and a few curious onlookers. None of them could ignore the story they had witnessed. A story of loyalty, survival, and unexpected hope. James knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. He had made mistakes, and rebuilding trust with his family, with the community, and with himself would take time and effort. But he was ready. The first stop after leaving the prison was a local animal shelter. James wanted to give Buddy a new home, one that was safe and filled with love. A place where the dog could finally be free from the prison's confines. As they arrived, James felt a sense of peace. Buddy, usually calm and reserved, bounded out of the car and sniffed the fresh air, exploring with joyful enthusiasm. It was as if he understood that life had changed for both of them. The shelter staff greeted James warmly. They had heard his story and welcomed both him and Buddy with open arms. Over the next few weeks, James settled into a modest apartment nearby. With the help of community programs and support groups, he began to rebuild his life step by step. He found work at a local animal rescue center, where he could combine his love for dogs with a chance to give back. Buddy was never far from his side, a constant reminder of the bond that had pulled James through the darkest days. Together, they spent mornings walking in the park, afternoons volunteering with other dogs, and evenings sharing quiet moments at home. James also reached out to the families affected by his past actions, offering apologies and seeking forgiveness where possible. It was difficult, but necessary. He wanted to face the consequences of his past honestly and to make amends in any way he could. The community's response was mixed. Some embraced his efforts, moved by his transformation. Others remained cautious. But James understood that healing was a process, not a single moment. One day, James was invited to speak at a local school about his journey. He stood before a room full of young faces, sharing his story, the mistakes he made, the consequences he faced, and the extraordinary loyalty of a dog named Buddy that changed everything. His message was simple but powerful. Everyone deserves a second chance, and sometimes hope comes from the most unexpected places. After the talk, a young girl approached him, eyes wide. "Your dog saved you?" she asked. James smiled and nodded. "Yes, Buddy saved my life. And he showed me that love and loyalty can change everything." As time passed, James and Buddy became symbols of redemption and the power of compassion. Their story inspired others to believe in forgiveness, in the possibility of change, and in the unbreakable bonds that connect us all. On quiet evenings, James would sit on his porch, Buddy resting at his feet, watching the sunset paint the sky. In hues of gold and pink, he no longer feared what the future might hold. Instead, he embraced it with gratitude and hope. James had faced his final request before execution, a chance to see his dog one last time. But what Buddy did next changed everything. Together, they had rewritten a story that once seemed destined for tragedy into one of survival, love, and new beginnings. And that was a story worth telling.